Why Vikings were impossible to stop. Until they became kings, Vikings didn't fight armies. They fought time. In the spring of 845, ships appeared on the River Seine. They bypassed villages and garrisons, heading straight for Paris. The Frankish king, Charles the Bald, assembled an army but found himself in a logical trap. If he didn't engage, the Vikings would sack the city. But if he fought a major battle and lost, he would lose his army. And in the early Middle Ages, a king without an army is a dead king. Brothers, nephews, and rebellious vassals were just waiting for him to make a mistake. A burned city can be rebuilt, but a lost army, and the throne along with it, are gone forever. Charles made the most pragmatic choice. He paid the invaders a massive ransom just to make them disappear. On that day, the Vikings proved one thing to all of Europe. They showed that you could attack the wealthiest centers, take everything, and leave before the local ruler dared to risk his own state. Thus began the age of the war against time. People usually assume Viking success was built on surprise and brutality, but there was plenty of brutality in the Middle Ages. The real weapon of the Northmen was asymmetry. They chose the time, the place, and the level of risk. European rulers had to defend thousands of miles of coastline and every navigable river simultaneously. The attackers only needed to find one weak spot. By the time a messenger reached the king, and the king gathered his militia and marched to the coast, there was nothing left to loot. This fundamental inequality was powered by one piece of technology, the longship. This wasn't just a boat. It was a medieval landing craft with perfect tactical specs, a draft of less than 3 feet. Where the Frankish military fleet would run aground, the Vikings sailed right through without dropping speed. The ship had no distinct bow or stern. If the crew fell into an ambush on a narrow river, they didn't need to turn the vessel around. The rowers just faced the other way and slipped out of the kill zone. Once on shore, they captured horses en masse. They didn't become cavalry in the traditional sense. They used horses as armored personnel carriers. Early motorized infantry reached the target faster than the enemy can put their boots on. But what happened when the local militia actually managed to block their path? Here, tactics were entirely subordinate to strategy. The Vikings didn't want a long war of attrition. Any unavoidable battle had to end in minutes so the raiding party could get back to the ships. Their ground tactics were also a war against time. Movies have trained us to picture half-naked berserkers roaring and throwing themselves onto swords in a chaotic brawl. That's a myth. On land, the Vikings were a cold, pragmatic military machine. Their baseline tactic was the skjoldborg, the shield wall. This wasn't some heroic pose. It was a hydraulic press. The front rank locked their overlapping shields, taking the brunt of the charge. It was a positional meat grinder. Fighters used axes with a special lug at the bottom of the blade. With this hook, a Viking could catch the rim of an enemy's shield and yank it down sharply. For a second, the throat was exposed, and the second rank delivered a precision spear strike. If the Vikings needed to go on the offensive, they used the svindfylking, the boar's snout. This was a wedge formation. At the very tip stood the veterans, the guys in heavy mail, with the best gear and years of killing experience. Their job wasn't to fence, but to act as a heavy battering ram. The wedge slammed into the weakest point of the Anglo-Saxon line to split it right down the middle. And this is where their ultimate tactical weapon came into play. The Dane axe, a massive blade on a shaft over 3 feet long. It wasn't meant for defense. It was a medieval can opener. A downward swing of this axe would cleave a shield in half, often taking the defender's arm with it, breaking the militia's line. It was total professional asymmetry. The Anglo-Saxon fyrd was made up of farmers who needed to get back to the harvest. They were up against the hird, professionals whose only job was war. The system worked flawlessly. Sail in, break the line, loot, sail out. But in 865, everything broke. The Great Heathen Army arrived in England. And they didn't leave. Instead of seasonal raids, they started building winter camps. They conquered Northumbria, then East Anglia, then part of Mercia. This was the peak of their military model. The ships provided mobility, and their massive numbers allowed them to wipe entire states off the map. But along with the land, the Vikings acquired a new problem. They got something they'd never had before. They had something to protect. Roads, farms, trading posts, and political centers can't be loaded onto a ship. From a highly mobile strike force, the Vikings began to mutate into a standard medieval administration. They had to collect taxes and hold borders. And you can fight a normal war against a normal administration. Europe finally figured out how to fight them. The Anglo-Saxon king Alfred the Great didn't chase ships. He turned to logistics and math. Alfred covered Wessex with a network of burhs, fortified garrisons. He designed the system so that no point in the kingdom was more than 20 miles from the nearest fort. Exactly 1 day's foot march. No matter where the Vikings landed, the locals had time to hide behind walls, while reinforcements were already marching from neighboring forts. Alfred broke the Northmen' greatest advantage: time. A sudden shock raid turned into a grinding, drawn-out siege, something the Vikings weren't built for. The Franks went even further. They realized the best defense against Vikings was other Vikings. In 901, King Charles the Simple gave a Scandinavian warlord named Rollo land at the mouth of the Seine. In exchange, Rollo had to get baptized and protect the river from new raids. Thus, Normandy was born. It looked like a Frankish defeat. In reality, it was a brilliant assimilation. To keep his land, Rollo and his descendants had to play by the rules of the state. Within a couple of generations, his grandkids were speaking French, building stone castles, and praying in churches. They were still dangerous, but they were no longer Vikings. The end came in the 11th century. In 1066, the Norwegian king Harald Hardrada tried to conquer England using the old playbook. He landed with a massive fleet, but the English army caught him by surprise at Stamford Bridge. Harald died, and his army was wiped out. A few weeks later, another army landed in the south of England. It was led by the Duke of Normandy, William, a direct descendant of Rollo the Viking. His men spoke French. They brought heavy cavalry. They relied on logistics and a feudal supply system. Harald arrived as a Viking and lost. William arrived as a head of state and took the crown of England forever. The Vikings didn't disappear because they were finally crushed in some grand battle. They were impossible to destroy as long as they had nothing to lose. They lost because they won. They conquered too much land, built their own kingdoms, and sat on thrones. They got cities, wealth, and massive armies, but they permanently lost the ability to just hoist a sail and disappear.